What would you be willing to do for $50,000? Could you face your fears? Would you eat a worm? Would you eat 5 worms? My name is Walker, and this is the Recap episode, a podcast where I use social science to research, review, recap, and realize new things about reality TV, covering shows that are all-time favorites and shows that you've never heard of. Today I am talking about Fear Factor. Now, I don't normally consider game shows to be the same as reality TV shows. Things like Wheel of Fortune, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Jeopardy, because there's not as much reality TV component to it. And one may consider Fear Factor to be kind of in the same vein, but I think there's enough reality TV elements to it to put it in the reality category, or at least the unscripted category. And I wanted to cover it anyway. So, Fear Factor is a competition reality show where in each episode 6 contestants compete in a variety of stunts that are designed to test them physically and mentally. And if they can complete the stunts, they move on to further rounds, and then by the end of 3 stunts, they've found a winner who gets to win $50,000, at least when they started the show. I do believe they kept up that $50,000 for quite a while, except for some future seasons where they do some team shenanigans, and the prize has a different amount. Not much out there to learn about the history and the making of this show. A lot of people just haven't really said that much, which is fine, but it just means I don't have as much information at the front here as I would for other shows. I did find out that Fear Factor was apparently NBC's answer to Survivor, which was airing on CBS, and it makes sense, the kind of challenges they do on Survivor and putting people in these difficult situations that are, again, testing them, versus the same thing on Fear Factor. I will say, if you compare the two, Fear Factor versus Survivor, yes, both may have aired for a long time, and both are still going. At least I know that's a fact for Survivor, and I believe it is for Fear Factor. But one of them is obviously way more popular and has had much more of a cultural impact than the other. Take with that what you will. The show first aired in 2001. This is the season I'm covering. First episode aired on June 11th. We had 9 episodes, and it went till September 5th. On streaming platforms, there's a 10th highlights of the season episode. I couldn't really figure out if this was something that was aired or again was made later for NBC to have as here's a highlight reel of this season that we can play in a marathon of the show, or if it was made for streaming platforms. I couldn't quite tell. I watched it on Amazon Prime. Very interesting thing there. All of the show, the sequence, which episode went first, second, third, is completely out of order compared to the actual airing order. I don't know why it's that way. And also all the pictures, the thumbnails on Amazon Prime are the wrong pictures for the episode that it's attached to. The weird thing about that is that Amazon Prime still has the air date, the original air dates attached to it. So you can see episode title June 11th, 2001. That's the first episode, but that'll be the 3rd or 5th one in their listing. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if maybe Amazon has some secret insider knowledge as to the sequence into which these episodes were actually filmed. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but it's hard to tell really when certain episodes were filmed in sequence with each other. And there's some clues that we have that maybe the airing sequence is not the same as the filming sequence. Specifically relating to how the host reacts and interacts with the contestants. Speaking of the host, and I've been delaying this for as long as I can for comedic impact, the host of our show is a very young and not bald Joe Rogan in 2001. At the time, he was most known for his role in the sitcom News Radio and as a commentator for UFC after previously having been a fighter as well. I did find that according to a 2015 interview, and this is on Wikipedia with a source linked, so it's you can go read it yourself. Rogan said that he really expected the show to get canceled after a few episodes due to the content, and that he really only took the host role so that he could generate material for his stand-up comedy career, which I find absolutely hilarious. He goes on to host numerous seasons, and I don't know about that comedy that he's doing now. It was a little bit of a, I had completely forgotten that I knew that Joe Rogan had hosted Fear Factor back in the day, and so popping that up and just see him, like, the first face you see, and just hear him say, like, I'm Joe Rogan. I was like, oh, that's right, you are here. The other surprising thing is that Joe Rogan in 2001 looks like a guy I dated in college. Very, very, very similar to each other, which was an odd experience for me personally. So that's really all I have for the background. I will get right into covering this recap and talk quite a bit about the show itself. So each episode has 6 new contestants, so we're meeting 6 new people each time. Because we're not carrying contestants episode to episode, you don't get a lot of time learning about them. But the show manages to squeeze in enough character detail and show enough of their personalities that you do kind of get attached to them within the course of the 40-ish minute episodes. Enough to, kind of have a favorite person and want to cheer them on, or any minor rivalries that develop, you get to kind of invested in. Typically, the first stunt they do is some kind of physical feat. Sometimes it'll just be like, complete this stunt that is like scary. Other times it'll be complete the stunt, but you have to like compete with the other contestants as well. And the 2 who do the worst, or anyone who doesn't succeed, or something like that, at a specific like level, is going home. The second stunt is usually like a mental feat, where they're trying to test the contestants' mental fortitude. Usually it's just like eating something gross, which is, fun to watch the reactions and see what kind of gross things the show came up with for them to consume. And then the third stunt is always a competition. Usually it's, again, another like physical challenge where they have to do something, but there will be like a competition element because they have to go down from however many people made it onto the third stunt. They have to select a winner. So it usually has some kind of caveat of do this thing, but you have to do it the best. Or, the worst person at the thing, whoever has like the slowest time, is, you're progressively eliminated over the course of the stunt to figure out who the final winner is. So I'm actually going to cover completely my favorite episode and go through like the whole thing to give you the experience of what it's like to watch one of these episodes. And then I'll go back and talk about all the stunts, cover them all, just so you get a good coverage of what's going on. To also let you know, across the whole season, we had 4 stunts that were just perform a physical feat, but there's no competition element, just do it and you pass. 3 stunts involved being covered in a bunch of animals. I'll explain that later. 6, technically 7, depending on how it happened, stunts involved eating something. Again, either something gross or a live creature. And then 14 of the stunts, the majority, were a physical competition. So you're doing the stunt and you're competing with your fellow contestants to see who does the best, and the worst are going home. So my favorite episode was episode 7. The reason it's my favorite, minor spoilers, is because all of the contestants make it through to the final stunt. And when you're watching all of these back to back, even in any order, which is nice, you don't have to watch this in order because it's a different set of contestants each time. You can just kind of pick and choose your episodes, which is really nice. When you watch the episodes, you kind of get used to like, okay, we're going to lose like 1 to 3 people in the first stunt, we might lose 1 person in the second stunt, and then we have, on average, like 2 or 3 people going into the final stunt. But this episode, everyone made it to the final, the end, which was just like exciting to watch. So this was episode 7, which is actually the first one on Amazon Prime. So maybe Amazon does know what they're doing, and they put the most exciting episode first. If that's the case, then kudos to them for figuring out how humans work. So we open onto a hotel. We get lots of shots of the hotel outside. They're really emphasizing how tall it is. It's daytime. We get to see our contestants sort of walk through the hotel halls and up into a room. Each episode has like a very dramatic opening where all the contestants silently walk into wherever the first stunt is occurring. I live for it. It's fun. So we meet our contestants. We meet Laura, Matt, Angel, Sophia, Billy, and Michael. It's a good mix of people who, some are saying they're here for the money, some are saying they're here for the thrill and the competition. Generally, people, based on what they say during the show, they're only here for 3 reasons. To win the $50,000, because they're thrill seekers, or because they want to prove something to themselves or to other people. And every now and then it'll be a mixture of those reasons, and they'll tell us, but that's pretty much it. So the first stunt they do is called... Joe Rogan also has like a name for all these stunts that he tells them, which is kind of, he goes like, this stunt is called this, and he'll explain it, or the other way around. So the first one is hotel jump, or free fall. The episode calls it hotel jump, Joe called it free fall. What they have to do is they're attached to a harness of sorts that has like a decelerator on it, so as it falls it will slow the rate of descent to a stop eventually. But they have to jump from the 12th floor window of this hotel. To like set this up, they have to like clamber into the window frame. They grab onto like a little trapeze bar where they hang from while they're getting like set up with the harness and decelerator properly. And then once they're good to go, they have 2 minutes to decide to let go of the handle to fall. If they don't do it in the 2 minutes, they fail the stunt. If they come back inside and decide not to do it, they fail the stunt. If they decide not to do it at any point, they fail the stunt. That's just a general rule for all the stunts. The big catch here is there's no bungee. There's no airbag at the bottom. The only thing they have to sort of protect them from crashing into the ground below and going splat is the decelerator, right? So this is the fear component, right? If you're afraid of heights, this is going to be challenging for you, but also the fact that there's nothing down there to save you if something goes wrong. Joe does tell us at the start of every episode that all of these stunts are designed and tested and supervised by professionals. So I was never... None of them ever seemed like so dangerous or so like didn't have enough thought put into them that someone would actually get seriously injured or killed. But, looking at it, you can kind of be like, oh yeah, that seems terrifying, to just jump out of the window and all I have to do is trust these ropes I'm attached to. They will slow me down so I don't crash into the ground and snap my legs in half. I will say this stunt felt kind of easy compared to other ones that I'll cover later, because it's like, yeah, if you're afraid of heights, it could be challenging, and like the build-up of making yourself let go of the bar, there's a lot of suspense and anxiety there. But it's also just like getting out of a window and then letting go of a thing and falling. And like once you've seen the first person do it and you know how it works, like if I was there and I went second or later, I'd be like, oh, this is super easy, let's go. But that's just a side note. So they go one by one. They're always randomly selected for the ordering of the event, the stunt. Billy goes first. He does it very successfully. We love that. Angel, she gets into the frame. There's a little bit of like build up because there was some minor rivalry forming between Angel and Laura and Sophia in the hotel room. Mostly Sophia just like trying to talk a lot and get into everyone's heads, talking about how if they'll hit the ground, they'll snap their legs and they'll die. Angel was I have a note, like when she fell, they suddenly changed the music to be this like cinematic, like emotional thing, and she kind of just fell in silence as well, which was kind of funny to watch with this. It made it very cinematic. Next was Laura. She like struggled and she really freaked out the whole time. She kind of held onto the bar for a little bit after being like ready to go, but she did it. She fell. And then we had Michael. Michael and Billy at this point both confirm they have a fear of heights. And Michael like freaked out before the fall, and he was also screaming the entire time down. And this is where we get a little piece of the like, I actually couldn't find out how they cast the show back then. I think I could find some things about casting since then. But I would imagine when you're getting on Fear Factor and you're kind of filling out the audition paperwork or the tryout or the interest form, they ask you for your demographics, and they ask you about all the psych stuff so that you can like be on the show and everything. Probably some liability things. And then I'm sure they ask you like, what are your greatest fears? Or here's a checklist of common fears. Are you afraid of any of these? What kind of situations would you not put yourself in? So I was wondering while watching this, because this seems again like a pretty easy stunt to do, if they just have a group of people who all said, or majority said, we're afraid of heights, we're afraid of falling, we're afraid of, all these things, or we have vertigo or something. But Michael and Billy sort of confirmed that. Matt, he really just does it. It was really easy for him. I literally have no notes. And then Sophia, who was the one that was talking smack back in the room, she's like very quiet and she's like scared. We get a little like ADR narration from her after she lands, and she's like, "Oh, that was terrifying, but I did it because there's a girl up there that I don't like," and it like cuts to Laura. So the show does have a little bit of these like reality TV production moments, you know, where they will use what they've filmed and edit it in a creative and a strategic way to produce a storyline and produce some other entertainment value. Specifically, you know, let's take this like minor joking rivalry and like amp it up. So they all passed the first stunt, which was, you know, exciting, and they have like really fun personalities. It's a fun episode. The second stunt is eating sheep eyeballs. They come together after the first stunt. I will say, I think all of the stunts were filmed on separate days. Mostly because Joe mentions, like, "Oh, we'll see you tomorrow sometimes." But also everyone's in different outfits and they look well rested. And if they got hurt, they look like they got medical treatment. So I think all 3 stunts are filmed on different days. They probably, you know, put them up in a hotel. They honestly may have been staying in the hotel that they jumped from for that first stunt. So the second one, they meet in a barn. Or at least a set that looks like a barn. I think it's a real barn now. They got some sheep hanging out. The stunt, again, is to consume 3 sheep's eyeballs in 3 minutes. And with these eating challenges, failure to attempt or complete means you're eliminated. And often, if you like throw up, that's also grounds for elimination. And, you know, not finishing in time, that doesn't count. And Joe always does like a check after each person does it to like see if they're hiding anything in their mouth, which makes sense for the validity of the competition, but is also wild that any of these people would hide any of these things in their mouth. Everything they eat is like foul, like stench wise, and probably flavor wise as well. So I put a note here that was kind of like, okay, 3 sheep's eyeballs is kind of intense. Like, how long is this going to take? And also they have 3 minutes. And also, all the eating challenges are done one by one. You know, it helps to have extra footage to like pad the shot if they need to. They were using an hour time slot. They needed to make at least 44 minutes of show. But I guess also it was easier to kind of have Joe and the producers watch them one by one. You know, if they were doing it like simultaneously, maybe something could like slip by and be sneaky. So 3 sheep's eyes. I don't think they're cooked at all. I think it's just raw eyeball. So random order this time. Matt's first. He just goes for it. He does it, but apparently he did it like just in time. Laura, she also goes for it. At this point, I note that while we're like paying attention to Laura watching it, they kind of like amped up the volume mixer on the chewing noises. I don't quite know the texture of a sheep's eyeball. I definitely did dissect one when I took anatomy in high school. I don't remember them being crunchy. But they definitely amped up the sound on the eating for this. Whether or not that sound was real, I'm inclined to believe it wasn't, because I didn't see a microphone anywhere on any of these people. So unless they had like really, really good boom mics hanging above them, I don't know how they did that unless it was overlaid later. But she makes it. Sophia also goes for it. She like just goes real fast. She like pops them all in and then just goes for it. Everyone else have been kind of going slow. And I will also say, imagine a sheep. You have it in your brain. Now imagine the sheep's eyeball. Imagine how big you think it is. When I first saw them on the like plates, in part, or in the like container, in part this is because of how far they zoomed in, I thought they were like orange sized for some reason. Like a small navel orange. I mean not a navel, like a somewhere between a clementine and an orange. No, they're like smaller than a cutie. They're like big grape size, strawberry size. So they're not that huge. You could like pop the whole thing into your mouth. You don't have to like take little bites. Michael also goes fast. This is really funny because we got a angle where Joe is watching him, and Joe has a vomit bucket ready to go. Like Joe's like leaned in towards Michael, holding the bucket. I don't know why Joe is so ready for the bucket with Michael. That was kind of funny to me. Joe, I also note here that Joe asked them after they each finished this, like if they're okay. I will say it does seem like Joe is honestly and earnestly like invested in making sure all the contestants that he's with for each episode are like doing fine. Like he's always asking them after each stunt, like, you know, the usual things of like, oh, what were you thinking when you were doing it? Were you scared? You know, all these things. But then he usually also does ask them like, hey, are you good? Hey, are you okay? Especially when it like really freaks them out. The eating ones this happens sometimes for. We see Billy go for it. He had the great strategy of like pinching his nose. Which I'll note in other episodes, Joe actually explicitly adds the instruction, you cannot hold your nose while eating the gross thing. So, good on you, Billy, for changing the rules. Angel, she's good. She makes it through. And this is where I note, like, wow, they've all made it through. They've all made it through the first stunt. They've all made it through the second stunt. It's a great, you know, set of people. Personality-wise and TV-wise, they were fun to watch. We move on to day 3, stunt 3, the water tank. Before each of the stunts, before the first stunt, you know, that's when we're like introduced to our contestants for that episode. We get a little preview, like their name, where they're from, what they do for their job, and they tell us a little bit about like, I'm here for the money. Moving into the second stunt, maybe they'll talk about like, wow, the first stunt was hard, or oh, I expected so and so to like succeed at the stunt and they failed. This is a tough competition, or maybe they'll talk about like who their biggest like threat is out of the remaining contestants. Same for moving into stunt 3. It's a lot of the same. In this pre-stunt voiceover, Laura does a really good job of playing into the reality TV characterizations. And continues this like weird rivalry that she has with Sophia. Honestly, by this point, I think Sophia's kind of done with it, and it's very one-sided. That was just a fun note. You know, some of these people, when they get on these shows, they really know how to like play things up for the camera. Maybe in a way that they don't normally do or naturally do. But if you know how to do it, that's how you, in other shows, that's how you get to stay on longer. And depending on your era of reality TV and what kind of shows you want to be on, that's how you get on other shows. Prime example, Tiffany Pollard. So, third stunt, water tank. Harkening back to Harry Houdini, as Joe says. They bound each contestant, their like legs together, and they dunk them into a huge tank of water head first. And basically the one who holds their breath the longest is the winner. They have like a weighted beanbag that they hold on to. And when they let go of it, I believe they're like automatically pulled out of the tank. Or at least like the crew around like uses that as a signal to yank them out. They don't have any other restrictions. They just have to be in the tank. I thought that the rule was also like you had to remain upside down. But as I go through these, I guess that's not the case. For this one, I have a note where I said, okay, this is an interesting way to eliminate the final 6 to 1 just by forcing a skill competition. Some of the physical competitions at the end, even though they are always a competition, you know, one of them would be like, hey, you're going to be walking across a balance beam in the air to do, like, get a flag and come back. And, you know, everyone can walk on the show. Most people have good balance. But this legitimately was like, if you're just bad at holding your breath, then you have no chance of winning. And that's what happened. I also have a note here while watching where I went, are they ever going to waterboard someone? Is that too far for Fear Factor to waterboard someone? So through this, we find out Michael hates water. We also find out he can't hold his breath that well. He only makes it 12 and a half seconds. And he is not doing good afterwards. Lots of like coughing and choking and sputtering. We got to see Joe check in on him, which was nice. Angel goes second. She makes it 18.6 seconds. There's a lot of talk about her being a scuba diver, but only makes it 18.6 seconds. Which, if you know scuba, that makes sense. They're not holding their breath that long. They're just used to being in the water. Laura goes third. She makes it 49.1 seconds. At which point I'm watching and I'm going, what the hell? I like sat there and then timed my own breath holding, and it was not as good as that. Sophia goes after. We know we have that minor rivalry that's mostly one-directional at this point between Laura and Sophia. And while Sophia's like doing the thing, Laura is like, she's like, don't do it. Let go. Give up. I mean, I get it. She wants that 50,000. And right now, you know, she's beaten Michael and Angel. Sophia's standing in her way. Sophia only makes it 39.5 seconds, so Laura's still in. Billy goes next. Laura is like freaking out since like he starts. I don't know if like he was telling her that he's just good at this automatically or what, but Laura's freaking out and she like breaks down like on the floor on her knees, some tears, when Billy passes her 49-second time. Billy makes it all the way to 1 minute and 6.6 seconds, which I was like, this is incredible. What is happening here? And then Matt is our last one to go. He's not really had like a super strong personality so far, but he's really done really well at all of the stunts. Interestingly, he like wedges himself horizontally near the top of the tank, which you might think like, what is that going to do for you? It's a huge tank of water. It's like 8-9 feet tall. The pressure in a tank of water is greatest at the bottom. So if you can remain near the top, then there's a little bit of like less pressure on you. Also, this like removed the fact that he was put in upside down, which at first I was like, does this not count as breaking the rules? Like that he had to like, maybe you only have to be dunked in head first, but you can do whatever you want afterwards. I would have considered it like some kind of rule breaking or made him like redo it or something. But either way, Matt actually lasts for 1 minute and 8.5 seconds, so 2 seconds longer than Billy. He is the winner. Everyone's kind of joking afterwards because apparently he's a smoker, so the smoker had the greatest like lung capacity. I did some like researching online into like how do you extend your ability to hold your breath and how do these people who have the ability to stay underwater for a really long time do it. Apparently a lot of it is like truly mental and meditative. I thought it'd be a lot more like physical and you have to train yourself to have like good lung capacity, good like control of your diaphragm. But no, they said like if you can kind of like zone out a little bit, get meditative, then you're using less oxygen. So you can use what you sucked in before you went underwater more efficiently and stand there longer. And it looks like both Billy and Matt, that's what they did. Is they were like really calm, collected in the water. And again, Matt kind of helped him that he wasn't 7 feet lower pressure difference. So he's our winner. This is my favorite episode. Like I said, everyone's personality was really enjoyable. Joe had a good time with all the contestants. There was the little mini rivalries. There was people like becoming friends, you could tell. And it was really nice and like it got exciting that every person made it all the way to the final round. And then it was like building up. Like the first person went, the second person did better, the third person did better. Oh no, Sophia didn't do as better. Laura's still in. And then Billy knocked Laura out. And then Matt knocked Billy out. And then he was the winner, you know. It was this nice like the tension and the excitement was building up to the climax, you know. A true, like, good example of storytelling in a reality TV episode. Both the final stunt and the whole thing. So if you'd ever like to check out just a single episode of Fear Factor, you don't want to commit to watching a lot or a whole season, I recommend Season 1, Episode 7, if you want, like, the classic intro Fear Factor experience. I'll have to let you know which episodes I recommend in later seasons when I eventually cover them. Or even, like, the revival. But now that I've covered one whole episode and you've gotten a good idea, I just want to go through all of the stunts in the season so that, you know, we can talk about all the different things that people had to do. And I'll go ahead and just go in order. So, airing order and order of the stunts within that episode. So, episode 1, our first physical competition is the contestants get tied / hold on to a handle for a rope that is attached to 2 horses, and then the horses are going to run and drag them along like a 100-meter stretch or something. And if they make it past the finish line, then they automatically go into the next round. If they let go, the 2 that make it the least far are eliminated. Second stunt for the episode, they have to lie strapped down. It looks like in the dark. Like it's a dark set, I'll put it that way. In like a pit, strapped down, minimal clothes on, just like shorts and a tank top, and they're covered in rats. Joe said 400 rats. I don't know how many rats is 400 rats. I do live in New York, but on a good day, I only ever see 0 rats. And on average, I see 1 rat. Maybe 2, if they're frolicking. So I can't give you a good estimate of how many rats, what 400 rats looks like. But it was a lot of rats. They have to lie strapped down, covered in those for 4 minutes. And then the final physical competition challenge. This one was weird, and at first I thought it was like impossible. Some of these final physical competitions have the lengthiest setup and rules to the point where it's comedic. So for this one, it's called the vertical hanging car. or the slippery car or something like that. So for this stunt, first they get into a car and they buckle their seatbelt in the Fear Factor branded car. The car is then hoisted, it's on like a crane, over the edge of a dam. They're at the big Tujunga Dam, I believe, in California. And it's like hanging, so the hood is kind of like hanging downward. That's like at an angle. What they have to do is they have to like unclip themselves from the seatbelt, climb out the driver's window, climb down to the bottom of the hood to grab a little flag that's hanging off the hood, climb back up to the top of the car, and then go over to the trunk and get a flag from the trunk that has the car's key attached to it, then climb back into the driver's seat, start the car, and honk the horn to like be successful. And the whole time this is happening, the car is kind of like swinging, rotating because it's being dangled, and it's also being sprayed with water. And the winner is just going to be whoever does it the fastest. The first two people, like the two ladies go first, and they don't even like make it down to the hood flag. They both are just like, this is impossible. Like they don't have the strength or they don't have the size to be able to stretch themselves down that far. Like only one of them actually completes it at all. Episode 2, the first stunt is just a physical feat. They have to just complete it. It's jump from one semi-truck to the other semi-truck, like on the top while they're going 40 miles per hour down a road. It's like a 7-foot gap. Out of the 6 contestants, only half of them make it by. Second stunt is another exist near animals stunt. There's a coffin-sized container full of superworms, which are grubs. They have to like lay in that for 4 minutes, and they are randomly selected to eat 0, 1, or 5 worms. So this one's kind of like a little bit of both, but not everyone has to eat the worms. And then the final, only of the 3 people who made it onto that stunt, only 2 people made it past. One of the contestants was a vegetarian, and also I could tell had a bit of a fear of bugs, so she did not even try. The furthest she got was like putting her hand into a container of the worms to pull out the piece of paper that says how many worms she would have to eat. And I think she got randomly pulled 1, and I think it was the combination of like dealing with the touching the worms and then having to even eat just 1. She was like, nope, I'm out. She was sobbing the whole time. So I do wonder again if like she had a major fear of bugs, insects, creatures. Final stunt for that one, the final 2 was, again, a weird premise. Get launched 100 feet up into the air, like a reverse bungee kind of thing. And then they have to shoot paintballs at the other remaining contestant who is strapped to a giant target also hanging in the air. And then whoever hits closest to the center of the target wins. Episode 3, the first stunt was climbing up from a moving jet ski onto the like landing legs of a helicopter and then hoisting yourself up into the cabin. All but 1 make it on from that. The next one, they go bowling. They get 2 balls to hit a frame, a standard 10-pin setup, and the number of pins left remaining is the number of live beetles that they have to eat. Beetles that are apparently very stinky and love to squirt a defensive juice. Oh, I'll make this comment now because it comes up later again, but I don't want to forget it. Anytime that the contestants have to eat a live insect, Joe reminds them for their safety that they cannot swallow it whole. They have to like kill the insect in their mouth, like munching it. If it goes down alive, then it will try to fight back and crawl back up their throat. There's some horrifying imagery for you. After the beetles, the final, all 5 made it through the beetles. And then after that, they have to crawl along a rope that is suspended 100 feet in the air, 60-foot gap between buildings. They have to make it from one side to the other. The catch here, and it's just going to be one of those, like, whoever makes it fastest wins. The catch here is they have to do it by being on top of the rope. If they flip at any point, they get a 2-minute penalty. One of the contestants tried to, play the game here and just flip at the start because you can actually usually climb faster hanging upside down on the rope because you can do, like, the hand over hand and just sort of drag your legs along. He did that and he made it across in 19 seconds, but then two of the later contestants both made it under 2 minutes total going over the top. So admirable gameplay from that guy. Did not pay out at all. Episode 4 First stunt is a physical challenge. Climb up and then jump from a 100-foot tower onto a hanging cargo net in midair, and then cling to it for at least 5 seconds. Sounds simple. They have to climb up the tower on their own. I've climbed a handful of ladders, including some very tall ones, and it's not so much the fear of the height that gets me, it's the like, wow, I'm still doing this. I have to keep going. There's a lot of these stunts where I'm kind of like, I could do that, or I'd at least try it. This one I'm like, I would do it, but God, I'd be complaining the whole time. The second stunt, only half the people make it through the cargo net hang thing. Most of them like hit the net and can't hold on to it, is the problem there. They all tried though. Second stunt is eat 5 earthworms and 1 superworm that grow up again in 4 minutes. Point out here real fast, one of the contestants in this one, she was really struggling. And they have to like chew the worms, they couldn't swallow them whole. Like instinctively dumped the worms back out of her mouth like 6 different times. At one point, like immediately back into the glass that they were in, and then just dumped them back into her mouth. Like it went back and forth 3 times in like 10 seconds. She made it through, but good God, that was like very tough to watch. At one point, Joe was like, okay, you've chewed them enough because you've spat them back out and I can see. Just swallow them and you will pass. Everyone that went into that stunt passed, even though it was difficult for 2 of the 3 of them. And then the last one is they had to crawl through, and I know, it possibly fake, completely dark drainage tunnel maze, and the fastest time through is the winner. Episode 5, they have to run to a finish line while being chased and attacked by a trained dog. They are wearing a protective suit, one of the like really big padded ones. The 2 furthest away from the finish are eliminated, so 4 people make it on past that one. Second one is they have to lie in a pit of snakes for 3 minutes, including a very large and very heavy boa constrictor. All 4 that go into that make it past. And the last one is they have to walk across a beam that is suspended 100 feet in the air, grab a flag at the end, walk back, and plant the flag to like complete the challenge. Fastest time wins. Only 1 person, or 2 people actually like made it back with the flag out of the 4. And of course, the one with the fastest time went out of those. Episode 6, they start on a submarine. It's docked, so not like in the submarine, like on top of it. And they have to dive down into the water around it, which is like 50, 55 degrees, so very, very cold. Dive under the submarine, grab a glow stick, and then come back. And the lowest amount of glow stick from each male and female group will go home. 1 person only went home, actually, because all but 1 person grabbed a single glow stick. Is kind of, a bit of a stalemate there. Second one was, first they threw darts at a dartboard with numbers, and that number indicated how many live crickets they needed to eat. This is, again, the live insect throat thing. And then the final stunt, all 5 made it past the crickets. The final one, they're hung on a zip line upside down. As they go down it, they have a beanbag, and they have to throw the beanbag onto a target. And the closest to the center wins. And again, all 5 do it. The nice thing about the competition ones is they're usually except for the ones involving cars, there's another one coming up. There's something everyone can do pretty easily. Even the guy for the zip line, the guy who won was freaking out about it quite a bit, but he still did it because once you're in the zip line, you're just kind of letting go and doing the thing. Episode 7 again, already covered it. Jumping from the hotel, eating the sheep's eyeballs, and holding your breath as long as you can, suspended upside down in a tank of water. Episode 8, this is another one of those weird, both the first and last challenges episode had a very strange setup. The first one, they're human wrecking balls, so they're lifted up into the air, and then they're let go and they swing, like a pendulum, head first through a wooden wall. They have a helmet on, but they're in a Superman pose, and they're holding onto a beanbag. After they go through the wall, there's a target on the ground that they have to throw the beanbag onto. It's a little strange setup. And it's the furthest 2 from the center eliminated, so only 4 people make it on to the second challenge. Second challenge is to eat 2 boiled buffalo testicles in 4 minutes, which is they are huge. Only 2 people make it past that one, and then the final stunt, another one of a Fear Factor branded car. They get into a car. The car is then lowered into the water, like a giant pool of water, except there's a little air pocket at the back, so it's not fully submerged. But it's supposed to emulate, your car, you've driven into a pond. They have to unbuckle, get into the back seat, extract a baby doll from a car seat, get back up to the front to go out the driver's window and then swim to the shore to, like, rescue the baby. Also, the driver's window initially is rolled up, so they have to, like, roll that down. Sure, lots of steps. The first guy who goes gets disqualified because he goes out the back window, which was already open. So cheeky trick from production there. And the last episode of the season, episode 9, first stunt was to climb a 35-foot tall telephone pole, which had rock climbing handholds attached to it, and then jump from the top of the pole onto a trapeze that is apparently 1.5 body lengths away. Grab onto the trapeze and hang onto it for 5 seconds. You have 15 minutes to do all that. Also, it's raining. This stunt literally took them the whole day. When we start watching the stunt, it's like early morning, and Joe even has to tell them okay guys, we had to bring in the lights because it's nighttime. And we still have 2 people who have to finish the stunt. The second stunt for this episode was to eat a randomly assigned pig part, including a kidney, a heart, a tongue, liver, the snout, and an ear. And then final stunt is there's a speeding semi down the road going 45 miles per hour, and there's a rock wall that's been installed onto the side of it, like a rock climbing, again with the rock climbing handholds. They have to climb across the wall from one end to the other, and then up onto the top of the truck while it's going down the road. This one is interesting because if they fall, they can keep going. It's really just get to the end, get as fast as you can go. It is interesting because I think by that point, one of the contestants was telling everyone that she does rock climbing, and she does not win. Episode 9 was very interesting because only one person actually finished successfully that first stunt. So what do you do if you have a winner of the episode after the first stunt? You give him $10,000, you bring everyone back for stunt 2, the pig parts. Even though they brought everyone back, only 2 of them made it on from the pig parts, excluding the guy who was the only one to pass the first stunt. It was a very funny moment though, because he what was he eating? The liver? And he couldn't do it, so he put a piece in his pocket as his time was running out. And Joe was why did you put a piece of the liver in your pocket? And the contestant, he just goes, well, it cost me my $50,000, so I think I earned it. Okay, King, you do you. At least he got the $10,000 from being the only one to do the first stunt. Which that first stunt was just sad to watch. The first 2 people couldn't even get up the pole. And they've been doing that for 15 minutes each. So imagine being a contestant and going 3rd or 4th. And you're just damn, this is sad. Personally, I will say, a lot of these stunts, I'm you know what, I would at least try it. There's some for me that I can kind of just convince myself to do the thing. Jumping out of the window, I could do that. I would try a lot of the physical ones. I don't think I would do well at a lot of the physical challenges, but I would at least try. I'm not a strong swimmer, so anything with the water, not great for me, but I could probably jump or try to jump from one moving semi-truck to another moving semi-truck. I could probably sit. I know I could definitely sit in a pit of snakes and a pit of worms for 4 minutes. The rats that I think I'd have to think about. I'd probably convince myself to eat. I don't really like insects, so I think that eating the insects ones is where I'd probably have to draw the line. I would just not even try it. I would freak out a little bit too much. I could probably try to psych myself up for it. But if you told me I had to eat 10 beetles because I failed at the bowling mini game, I might do 1 and I'd be out. I'd probably eat the other gross stuff. Or at least, again, I would try real hard. Height stuff, I'd probably be good with. Again, at least, I'm not saying that I would succeed. Keep in mind, I'm just saying that I would at least do it. To me, going down a zip line by your ankles seems like a fun afternoon activity. Some things, just, from watching it, and having kind of the, mind of watching a lot of reality TV and these kind of competitions. In the snake pit challenge, the final contestant ends up with the boa constrictor, partially around his neck, which I thought was interesting because we got footage of the handlers for the snake, very gently and purposefully placing the boa constrictor with the person each time. So I couldn't tell if they just placed it near his head or what happened there. I will say for all the animal be in the pit of animal challenges, the worms, the rats, and the snakes, someone, this is sign of 2001 television, practices. They kind of just had big plastic storage totes full of the animals, and then they would just kind of unceremoniously dump them on top of the contestants. So, like, oh, lie in the coffin, and Howard is going to dump a big container of worms on you. And the rats were also just, like, in containers, and then same for the snakes. The thing for the rats versus, like, the worms are kind of, there's so many of them, and they're small, they kind of act as a fluid when they come out. The rats, you know, they're kind of, like, scampering all over each other, but they're a bit smaller, so they're still kind of, like, they flow out of the thing pretty well. The snakes were just kind of, like, all writhing on top of each other, so they just sort of, like plopped out of the container as a big mass. And then once they were on the person, they were, like, wiggling around. I don't know, I just found it comedic that, like, you know, when they had to, like, and then they have to, like, get all the animals off the people between the contestants, so, like, to reset, it's like, okay, pick up all the worms, pick up all the snakes, put them back in the little storage bin. I'm sure, you know, they had handlers and people were, like, watching them and taking care of them, but it's one of those, like, you know, they say, like, no animals were harmed in the making, and it's like, are you sure? Are we positive? But the thing about the boa constrictor was, like, it was, you know, it was near his head, and he's even, like, you know, saying, like, hey, it's around my neck, it's getting really tight. The way that Joe was, like, talking to him during this made it sound like if he gave up because the boa constrictor was literally constricting his neck, that he would fail the challenge. And I'm like, if it actually started to constrict, would they just, like, and he said no, would they just, like, not do anything? Like, if it started constricting was going to kill him, and he had to, like, give up before the time says, would they have still eliminated him? If they did, I would have been like, that's unfair. For the pig parts in the final episode, where they brought everyone back who, like, failed the first challenge, it almost seemed like literally no one could physically swallow or chew some of them. I don't know if this was added sound afterwards, but they were, like, in a Chinese restaurant, so they had, like sort of, like, ceramic porcelain plates. Some of these parts, when they were, like, picking them up and putting them on the plate and moving around, were making, like hard noises. Like, if you took two ceramic mugs and knocked them together and they made that kind of, like, resonant sound, that's what these pig parts, the sound they were making on the thing. Like, when the guy who completed the first stunt, like, went to eat the liver, he was trying to, like, break it into pieces, and it just, like, cleanly, like, snapped apart. So I don't know if they were, like, preserved or dried to have, like, a jerky thing. The snout looked, like, exceptionally chewy, which I would imagine it's, like, very dense tissue. But if it was, like, sort of, like, dry preserved as well, then it probably was even chewier, kind of like a jerky. The first two contestants for that, like, when they went, which was the kidney and the heart, they legitimately just, like, couldn't even swallow the piece. So I was like, is this just, like, too tough? I thought it was kind of weird. And then I'll just say, the beanbag target challenges, I thought, like, these are definitely in favor of the people that go later. The one of the wrecking ball, where they had to, like, slam to the wooden wall and then drop the beanbag on the target, the first guy who went was 73 feet away from the center of the target. And then literally everyone who went after him was like, oh, okay, I need to drop the beanbag significantly sooner. So they all did much better than him. And that was the first stunt of the episode. Like, he did it, and as soon as he saw the second person go and where their beanbag landed, he was like, yep, I'm going home. So, you know, one of those things where I think if that stunt was being done on a show today, they would potentially do it in a way where, like, the later contestants can't watch the earlier contestants, like, do that part of the stunt. So they couldn't get, like, a leg up, if they were really concerned about being fair. Maybe they didn't care. I thought the drainage pipe maze was a little weird, in the sense that, like, so it's a pitch black maze of, like, allegedly a drainage output pipe. But, and Joe says they have, like, infrared cameras in there. I would assume, like, infrared cameras, like, mounted at the corners, which, first question, who did they send in there to do that? How did they mount the cameras? And how are they working so well? Follow-up question afterwards. There's, like, dolly shots following the contestants through the maze, but they're not wearing, like, a GoPro head camera thing like they do for some other stunts. It's just them in the maze of the pipes. So, and the pipes look kind of, like, more plasticky, and, like, they have a lot more, like, movement to them than I would expect. So I do wonder if the drainage pipe maze was real at all. And you can also, like, see in the footage, there's, like, things that are bumping, like, there's, like, slime on the ground, it's, like, wet, there's a big pool of water at one point where there's a junction of pipes that they have to figure out which way to go. There's just, like, stuff, like, attached to the ceiling of the pipes. Well, it doesn't look like it's, like, truthfully attached to anything in any meaningful way. It looks like someone just took, like, a latex glove, filled it with something slimy, and then just like taped it to the top of the pipe. So I don't know. I can't find anything that proved it was real. I have more leaning towards it was designed to be this thing for the contestants to compete in, and also so that it could be filmed well in. I don't think there was any significant influence by production, except for one possibility. And again, this is where the thing kind of like blurs the line between game show and reality competition show. You can't legally rig a game show. Like, you can't. That's just like illegal. But, you know, in like a reality competition show, you could probably try to like set up some things from the production side of the house to make it so that one of your contestants has a more difficult time than another one. In the worm coffin stunt, one of the contestants I mentioned earlier, she was a vegetarian. And it looked like she had a real big fear of creepy crawlies, because she was not doing... As soon as she saw the worm, she started freaking out. As part of that stunt, not only did they have to lay in the coffin for 4 minutes covered in the worms, but they also had to first reach into a container of a small little bucket full of the worms to get out a piece of paper that told them how many worms they needed to eat. She went second. And the reason I point that out is because the first guy, you know, he had to reach in, he had to do his thing. Joe put the paper back into the container afterwards, so they all could have the same chance of getting the same random draw of 0, 1, or 5 worms. But we don't see where the container went after that. All we focus on is the guy doing the stunt in the coffin and the other people reacting and Joe, you know, talking. Who's to say that while the little container of the worms with the paper in it was off to the side, they didn't replace all of the pieces of paper with 1 or 5 worms? So that no matter which paper she pulled, she actually was going to have to eat a worm to pass the challenge. I'm not saying that it happened. I'm just saying that I could see it happening. And it technically not, you know, counting as rigging the competition, because it is her decision to do that, you know, and they can make it harder for that particular contestant. The most notable moments for me while I was watching was, again, the last episode where only one person completed the first challenge. Again, it was kind of sad to watch that happen, because everyone else just couldn't really do it that well. And then they brought everyone back, only for 2 people to make it to the end, not even including the guy who passed the first stunt. The other, like, wildest moment of the season to me, which is something you're only going to catch if you're, like, really paying attention and you're trying to, like, take in as much as you can. During the episode where the first stunt was to run a distance while being chased by an attack dog while wearing the safety equipment, they're doing this, like, on the backdrop of a prison. That's like, they're like, oh, well, where are attack dogs used? Oh, they're used at prisons to, like, handle inmates or whatever. So they're filming at a real prison. I don't know which one. I could probably do some GeoGuessr type investigation to figure it out based on what we saw of the prison in the background. And they've got like a real guard with a real attack dog. While they're doing this stunt, and it's all 6 of them because it's the first stunt, you can see in the background that there's just like inmates from the prison just like out in the yard watching the stunt and the show being filmed. And there's like the first time I saw it, I was like, wait, is that what I thought I saw? And then like 5 minutes later, when they're like showing one of the other contestants after she finished, and she's like getting up and making sure she's okay, they're like really zoomed in on her, and you can really see like 3 guys in the background like hanging onto the fence from the other side in like prison jumpsuit, prison uniform kind of thing, just like watching. I don't know even what to make of that, or even what comment to say about that, but I guess cool that they let the inmates of this prison watch this episode of Fear Factor be filmed, and watch these 6 people get attacked by a dog. And Joe Rogan is there. So I'm trained in my education in methods of social science for like research purposes, which means that I have learned how to talk to people and observe people and what they do, what they say, how they act, and take that all in, analyze what I've observed, and turn that into ideas and conclusions about how or about that specific like group of people. And that's what I like to do on this podcast with these reality shows. And so for Fear Factor, we have, 54 total people across the season, 9 episodes, 6 contestants per episode. And one of the questions I like to start with is, well, what does the show like do for the people at the focus of the show? In this case, the contestants. Also, the show seemed pretty respectful to them. It didn't necessarily like go out of its way to be mean to any of them if they chose to not do a stunt or failed a stunt. The show didn't edit them in like a particularly harsh way. Joe was usually pretty respectful to them as well, saying like, hey, you tried your best, thanks for playing, unfortunately you're eliminated, gotta go home. So the show, it's not being mean-spirited. What I do find interesting, about what we got to see, like the show as kind of a look into the kind of people that sign up for and participate in this show. I mentioned previously that they explained we got a pretty good mix from the cast members, the competitors themselves. Some are here for money, some are here for thrill-seeking, some are here because they want to prove something. That's really the kind of like motivation that we learn about this particular set of people from this show. Another thing that we get to see a lot of, and this is based on like body language and the interactions between the contestants, is that they're all really like competitive people, which makes sense. You would almost have to be competitive to some level to want to sign up for the show and then get on it and try your best to win. But we get to see this kind of like playfulness element to the competitive nature, and I think in part this is also what kind of gave me the idea that the show is filmed over multiple days, and not only that, but the contestants get time to kind of like hang out and get to know each other between the stunts, and also during the filming of the stunts when they're not actively doing it, they're waiting for other contestants to go, or for example, like the film crew to be set up or the stunt to be reset. We get to see a lot of like playful banter, friendly like teasing and support. There's a few times where there's like a semi-manufactured rivalry, and oftentimes it ends up feeling pretty one-sided. Or there may be a character that's really good at antagonizing everyone else, so that character becomes, a bit of a villain. And here I'm saying like character, because these are real people, and these may be their real personalities, but everyone puts on a little bit of an act and a little bit of a personality for the camera, for the show. But that's that's the nice thing we get to see and observe by watching the people in this show, watching them do what they do and how they do it. And so for me, answering the question again, like, what does Fear Factor do for its contestants aside from giving one person $50,000? It respects them, it shows the world how competitive these people are, but also a little bit, crazy. I mean, imagine if like your best friend went on Fear Factor and you got to watch them consume 3 sheep's eyeballs. Right? Like, you kind of be like, okay. To some level, you have to wonder how much restraint like the editors and production team had, because it would be very easy to edit these contestants, these cast members, in a way that makes them seem like desperate. Like, I really need that $50,000. I'm willing to do all this crazy stuff, And I think in part that's why a lot of them didn't lean into, like, I need the money desperately. It's more of like, I want the money would be nice, but I'm also here because, like, I want a challenge. I want to prove myself, or I'm just having a good time. All in all, what do I think? This is just a good show if you are into competition, tension, and really just watching normal people do weird things and like bizarre stuff. It's your kind of show. Put it on. Even if you just put it on in the background and look at it every 4 minutes to be like, oh, what's happening? But maybe you want to check it out. Season 1, I will say it's 2001. And it's 2001 just before 9/11. Peak Y2K aesthetic. The music, the outfits, the way the people talk, the font they use, like not only for the Fear Factor logo, which is an iconic logo, I think, but like the font for like the chyrons of the names and everything is just like so Y2K. I love it. It's one of my favorite, kind of like aesthetic periods. And again, they kind of like, maybe they were, prompted by production to some extent as like a preemptive, like, here's how the show, like, filming is going to work, here's some things we'd like you to keep in mind. Maybe they were sort of prompted by them to, like, pick someone else, build up a rivalry, or try to, like, form a friendship and, support each other. It, like, makes good TV. I will say, some of the episodes, when Joe is doing his intro spiel and he explains to all 6 contestants at the top of the episode, and he's like, this is Fear Factor. You're going to do stunts. If you fail to do them, you're eliminated. If you choose not to do them, you're eliminated. Some of the episodes, that's where he stops. And he's like, let's get into it. Some of the other episodes, he adds this piece that he's like, this is a competition. This is a game. We encourage gamemanship. So if you want to try to, like, strategize or play on each other's fears, get into each other's heads, that is all welcome. I wonder, and this is one of those things where you can't tell based on the airing sequence, like, when this started, because he mentioned it, like, in the first episode, but then maybe he didn't mention it in the second or third or something like that. So I do wonder if that's another sign of the airing date being different than the filming date or sequences. And maybe after, like, a couple of episodes being filmed, the producers were like, hey, Joe, we need to, build up some more tension, some more excitement. See if you can get the competitors to kind of, like, go at each other a bit psychologically while they're waiting to do the stunt. I will remark, it is nice that, like, while they're waiting to do the stunt, or they're watching someone else do it, all the other competitors get to, like, hang out and chat. On modern competition shows, you'll hear a lot of people who are on the show talk about being on ice, being on hard ice, when cameras aren't rolling, or on them specifically, so they cannot talk. If they're going to be talking, the filming crew wants to be capturing it. You can tell that they're, like, off to the side chatting, which I think is kind of nice, Back in 2001, when things were simpler for the reality TV world. Only a few times during the season did Joe specifically ask contestants if they had, like, a specific fear or discomfort. Fear of heights, he'd kind of pick on the people who are vegetarian and then they're being forced to eat animal pieces or live animals. And so, I assume, again, the casting process and stunt planning was tailored to each set of contestants, but I definitely would have thought there had been more, like, playing up the fears from Joe, and really, especially the ones that kind of, like, match, this contestant does have a fear of heights, or making him jump out of a window. There's a little bit of that, but I would have expected more. Maybe in future seasons that does come up. I'll have to wait and see. I will say, wrapping it up, on my scale of don't bother with this show to this is an icon of reality TV culture, I'd say season 1 of Fear Factor is a simple, like, watch it if you want something interesting and new that you haven't seen before. I actually had never watched Fear Factor before doing so for this episode, and I enjoyed it. But this is the kind of show that I would end up enjoying. I kind of like the gross stuff and seeing people do challenges and different and crazy things and stunts. So, if you're, like, a Ripley's Believe It or Not fan, you'll probably find this entertaining. That's all I'll say. It has, like, that kind of vibe. Have you watched Fear Factor? Are you a longtime fan of the series? Are you now interested in watching it? What are your thoughts if you go and see it, or if you've seen it before? Let me know. Which stunts do you think you would and wouldn't do, and which ones do you think you would succeed or fail completely at? I'll say it again. Eating the live bugs, I could probably do the worms. But for me, the crickets and the beetles, and even the superworms, it's the legs and the wings and the crunch. Can't do it. I don't like bugs in the first place. Everything else seems kind of fun, though. That's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. This has been the recap episode. If you'd like, you can follow the pod on Instagram at the recap episode. You can also subscribe on YouTube, where all these episodes are uploaded on YouTube for listening convenience at the recap episode pod. On the Instagram, I post updates about what I'm watching next and announcements for when new episodes come out. And if you'd like, leave a comment or review here on Spotify or your preferred listening platform. And until next time, I'm going to go jump out a window to see if I can win $50,000 and face my truer fear of Joe Rogan with hair.